My greedy stepfather is demanding I give him my late father's house because my mother told him he could. I, 31 years old, have a stepfather who my mother married a year after my father had passed away. I felt uncomfortable seeing my mother fall in love with another man so quickly. I never thought anything of it, until my mother and I found out that my father didn't leave my mom with anything on his will. Instead, all of his assets and his beach home was all under my name. My father left me a letter and I ended up reading it and finding out things I wish I never knew. My father, who was sick at that time, found out that my mother was having an affair with another man. He told me that he suspected it a long time ago, ever since they found out that my father had cancer. And ever since then my mother became distant. He told me that my mother would constantly ask about his will and how she would remind him that she will take care of the beach house when he passes away. My father was heartbroken and he spent her last few days of his life next to someone unfaithful. When I read the letter, I couldn't help but to break down crying inside my room. I wish I should have been there for my father. And the more I cried, the more I felt anger and hatred for my mother and my stepfather. When my mother found out that she was left with nothing, she started flipping the tables and started screaming, asking why she wasn't left with anything. It was clear that my mother only cared about my father's assets, and not for him. I decided to leave my hometown and cut ties with my mother and her mister. I decided to move to my father's beach house, where I would try to start over. I've always worked from home, so moving to another area was never a problem. It wasn't until recently I got a text message from my stepfather. He asked me how I was doing and I didn't respond. He texted again and he was more straightforward. He told me that I needed to move out of the beach house because my mother and him will be moving in. But if I wanted to stay, I could pay them rent for my room. I looked at the text completely speechless, not knowing if he was bluffing or if he was serious. I told him that the house was under my name and that I would call the cops if they ever set foot inside my home. He never responded afterwards. I thought that was the end of it until a couple weeks later, and I had gotten a notification from my phone while I was out grocery shopping that there was motion near my driveway. I opened the app and saw both my stepfather and mother stepping outside their vehicle as they continued to unpack their belongings. My heart sank, and I immediately felt anger inside me. I decided to call the cops ahead of time and told them that I had people trespassing my property. By the time I had arrived, the cops were also there. You can now check if there is a part 2 by pressing share and more.